All right, here we are at Blues Fest in Sheffield. It's Matt Stocks here with Rick from 10 Years After. This is the first interview of the whole weekend, Rick. Wow. So thank you for setting the bar nice and high and getting things off to a great start.
I hope, yeah.
It's a pleasure to have you on. So you're fairly local, right? Is it Macclesfield?
No, I live in Millersdale. Yeah, it's about 40 minutes from here.
You've been in the band since pretty much day one, right?
Absolutely, from day one. Yeah, I was a founder member along with Alvin, Leo, and Chick.
I wonder if you could gaze back through the wistful, nostalgic lens of time, sort of tell us about some of those early iconic festivals you guys appeared on, specifically maybe Woodstock or Newport Jazz or Isle of Wight, because I mean those festivals are such legendary events, aren't they?
The Newport Festival was the first year that George Ween, who's the promoter, decided to put on sort of bands that had a little bit of jazz influence, which TYA in those days had quite a lot. Zeppelin played as well. I'm trying to think, Jethro Tull, I think. Oh, sorry, Jethro Tull.
Shots fired. What was Zeppelin like that day? Did you watch them?
No, we didn't, because we only did 3 numbers, because we just got started, and some bloke came on and said, sorry, we're going to have to stop the show for a few minutes because people are trying to break down the fences, and you know we're stopping the music. But they never asked us to go back on again, so we only did 3 songs.
Robbed.
And I think once that happened, we just got out of there. You know, I did meet Miles Davis there though.
Wow, that year.
Yeah. When we were at the hotel, we were staying. Most of the bands were staying in this huge hotel out on the headland, near to where all the Rockefeller and all the big barons of the 30s, where they got their houses, and the hotel was superb, and a lot of the bands were in there. And I was outside the hotel one morning. I guess it must have been before we played, and there was a board there, you know, with all the bands on it, and I'm looking down it, and over my left shoulder comes this hand, this black hand and arm, and I hear somebody go, "That'll be good." And moves down a bit. "That'll be good, and that'll be good, and that'll be good, because that's me." And I turned, and it was Miles Davis. And he said, "Hi, I'm Miles." I said, "Oh, I'm Rick from 10 Years After. Hey, I heard a lot about your band, man. I'm really impressed with what you guys are doing. You know, the new young bands. I'm really into it." And he was obviously at that point he was clean. You know, he looked fit as a flea. You know. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm just going for a walk across the headland, you know." He said, "Do you mind if I join you?" I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." And we just chatted and talked about how the band had formed and what he was doing and what he was trying to do, you know. And it was absolutely fantastic. And then I suddenly remembered that because my first wife was with me on that trip, she was still at the hotel, and I was supposed to be walking with her. So I said, "Sorry, I'll be back in a few minutes. I'll run to the hotel, get her." When I came back, he'd gone. So, but then the next time I saw him, you mentioned earlier the Isle of Wight. The Isle of Wight was totally and utterly different to Woodstock. I mean, Woodstock did what it said on the tin. You know, it was peace and love and music. The Isle of Wight was really none of those things at the end. The kids again had broken in trying to make it a free festival, but the promoters had turned the dogs on them. You know, the police with dogs, had sticks beating people. It was a totally different ballgame. And it was really the period when money came in. You know, people realised a lot of money to be made at these festivals, you know. We played that day Joni Mitchell was on, and she was booed, and she came off stage in tears. She was destroyed, you know.
I mean, what does the blues music mean to you?
Well, it's what as you said earlier, it's what we started with. You know, I mean, I was introduced actually to jazz first of all by the drum teacher I was with, who was the guy that played with Alvin and Leo before I joined the band. And then, of course, when I met Alvin was into Chuck Berry, John Lee Hooker, you know, Ray Charles, all of that, which I was not actually aware of, because the band I'd been playing with at that point were into like the Hollies and stuff, and the Everly Brothers and all that, you know, who were great, but it was not the same. So my blues background, if you like, came through Alvin Lee, really. And he his parents were very into the blues, and they used to take him to the Dancing Slipper, which is a ballroom in West Bridgford, Nottingham, and where John Lee Hooker would be booked to play, you know, because Chris Barber, you know, was the first man to bring those guys into England, because they'd done a tour of America, and Chris went to the clubs in Chicago and went absolutely crazy for all these, you know, Muddy Waters and Sonny Boy Williamson, you know, and he said, I want to bring these guys into England. So he and his manager did that, and they brought them all in, and then they would send them out on provincial tours, you know. So we got to see that. Well, I didn't, but Alvin used to go and see these bands and these players in Nottingham, you know. And his parents then would quite often invite them back to their house for a drink afterwards. And he said, you know, he sat in the living room, and John Lee Hooker was there showing him how to play.
Simpler times, wasn't it?
Absolutely, oh yeah, yeah.
And I guess because of those tours is the reason we ended up with bands like yourselves, the Stones, you know, because that was, I imagine, a lot of young English musicians' introduction to this raucous, electrified music.
Yeah. Well, and also, we in a sense were taking the blues back to where it came from. Yeah. Because
giving it them back.
Yes. Well, a lot of the bands, I mean, B.B. King was not really heard of in America until the English bands started going there and playing his stuff. You know, they were on like the Chitlin circuit, as you called it, you know, or as you said with the Wire-Nets and the whole bit. You know, they weren't mainstream at all, and it was later when Bill Graham started to put bands together with three acts on the show. You would get somebody like Hooker would be on there, or BB, you know, staple singers and all, and it was fantastic. Those shows were great because you always had three bands, and it was quite often very diverse bands, but with one foot in the same genre. If you get my drift.
Rick from 10 Years After, thanks very much for your time.
Is that it?
Yeah. We would like to keep it fairly short because otherwise it'll become like a documentary. Thank you so much. That was really great.
Pleasure. Good to meet you.
Have fun today. What can we expect from the set?
Oh, not a lot. No. We're actually going to play longer because the headline band are not arriving apparently, and we've been told we can extend the set. So
Their loss, your gain.
well, hopefully we can do 2 hours instead of the hour and 45 or whatever it was we were doing. So that'll be good because it means to do the whole set, and we'll be doing all the classics. And when I say that, I'm Going Home, Love Like a Man, Hear Me Calling, those things. And we're also doing some stuff from the back catalogue from years ago, which we did a lot of last year. And then we've got a new album out. It's the 50th anniversary this year. And we've got the 50th anniversary album out. It's a studio album. We've all written the material. And it's called The Sting in the Tail. And I think we're doing about 5 tunes from that as well. So old and new, you know.
Amazing. Rick from 10 Years After, thanks so much, mate. Have a great day. Cheers.